yo, homie, this movie's a hit.
We got to be careful about where we're at, right?
Right.
So it's been a while since we last spoke. Last time you were on, I remember we did After Hours where you were saving a few women's lives. And I did want to tell you this on camera. One of the girls that you spoke to actually quit OnlyFans on that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people think that, I guess, those conversations are not worth it or the show is all theater. But for me, I want to sit across from these young women because anybody's life could have ended that way. You know what I mean? Like I could have ended up being one of these OnlyFans girls if there weren't so many like life interventions, because it's just being sold to women so much that this is the easy way out. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but I wanted to make sure I told you that, you know, on camera, that she literally quit like not too long after you did that show. So that's great, saving lives.
That makes me happy.
So kind of with that, I saw that you had did a debate on Jubilee with a bunch of feminists. Obviously, we're in a modern day age. Things have changed quite a bit. We've both been pretty critical of feminism, but I think with what you're doing, you know, you're able to really reach a demographic of women that just guys like me and Andrew Tate and others just aren't going to reach, because, you know, we're abrasive in the way that we get it. So they might want, you know, another female's perspective on, you know, the detriments of feminism and everything else like that. So kind of given how society is now, how do you see feminism today with young women? And then what do you predict is going to happen in the next 5-10 years? Are we getting better? Is it getting worse? What are your thoughts in general on that?
So I was actually very interested in Tate culture, I guess I'm going to call it. So I'm going to put you in that orbit of Tate culture, all of these male influencers that were coming out and calling girls bitchs and hoes and all this stuff. And people sat back and were like, oh my God, this is horrible, whatever. But I'm like, wait a second, whatever you think about him, whatever you think about Tristan, whatever you think about Myron, this culture got very big very quickly, and there's got to be something there, right? There has to be. So that was the reason why I flew out to meet Andrew Tate. There was all these conspiracies that I knew him before and all. I met Andrew a total of 2 times before I did his show. My husband hung out with him maybe 3 times in his life before him and I met. He was actually friends with PJW, and that's how I met Andrew.
Gotcha.
Like, so my husband was actually friends with PJW. And I just wanted to know what it was, because I'm never a person that will dismiss something on its face and call it a name. Like, there has to be some substance here. And what was actually happening was you got Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate and you got Myron Gaines because you perpetuated a culture of Lena Dunhams, right? So you're acting like men just got tired of it, is what happened. And finally, men looked around and somebody stood up and said, it's actually okay to be a man and you don't have to listen to any of these women. Now, you may not have liked how they said it. You may not have liked that they were doing this on top of Lamborghinis. But the reality is that what sat beneath that was a horribly toxic culture where women were dictating the terms to men. And every time a man did something that actually felt natural to them, you called it toxic masculinity, and books were written, and Lena Dunham's writing articles, and there's a show about this, and Lena Dunham's naked on Instagram. I wrote a whole chapter about Lena Dunham in my book, and she's naked on Instagram, and she's lecturing you if you don't want to see her, you know, overweight, naked, and tatted up. So you can't blame the culture, Tate culture, until you are ready to address where this actually came from, which was women constantly bashing men over the head and telling them that masculinity, full stop, was wrong.
Given the problems that we have, you know, obviously, whether it's me or Tate or other people, will kind of come in and say, hey, this is what you need to do as a guy. You know, this is how the modern day marketplace is now when it comes to dating. What's your approach to kind of combating this problem from a female perspective?
First, you have to understand the origin of feminism, right? You have to understand that this was not a culture and an ideology that came because they wanted women to have equal rights with men, okay? This was a CIA-sponsored PSYOP. Gloria Steinem was sponsored by the CIA, okay? These protests were sponsored by men in government. A lot of them homosexual, actually. And the reason for that was simply because they wanted to tax, it was actually twofold, I would say. They wanted to tax household income both ways. And also they wanted women to, instead of focusing on their kids, which comes natural to women, right, to be the quote unquote, like I say, CEO of the household, they wanted to remove that and to have the children given to the government for 6 hours a day. Beyond 6 hours a day, 6 hours a day, plus whatever sports activities, which gives the government full control over the minds of the children. This came straight from the Pale of Settlement. After they assassinated the Tsar, you had these Jewish women like, I Emma Goldman, who came over to America. Emma Goldman was the mentor to what's her face from Planned Parenthood. I'm blanking on her name for a moment. I'm going to say Margaret Sanger. That was her mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was, in fact, a very radical communist movement that came to America and sought to overthrow families, family institutions, strong men, feminine women, stands in the way of government and absolute control.
In your book, Make 'Em a Sandwich, what are some of the things that you tell the women? Because I'm assuming it's a book that's going to be centered around how women can kind of get in the marketplace, find a long-term partner, get married. What are some of the strategies that you tell women to implement to find a partner? You don't have to give it all away.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
one
it's
or
fine.
two.
I don't even try in my book to sell them a strategy or a technique. I just tell the truth. So here's the history of feminism. Here's what we were told in school. Here's actually how it went down, right? Knowledge is power. I give them the actual statistics of the fact that what was sold to you was you were going to be just like a man and you were going to be happier. Women are actually more miserable than they've ever been. If you go back and you ask most women about their grandmothers, they remember grandma being happy, right? So what they actually sold to you, now you've achieved this equality, quote unquote equality, and women have never been more miserable. And women are popping more pills than they were popping and finding it harder to find a partner and wondering why. Well, it's because you attacked natural masculinity. You told men that they shouldn't be allowed to lead. Women have to lead. And actually, you didn't want that, right? You were convinced psychologically in a classroom, as I was back when I wanted to be a feminist or I thought feminism was cool. And you should know that. And I think that that's how you change things without trying to say, here's a strategy and here's how we're going to move forward. Let people know true knowledge, let people know true history. And I think the rest of the stuff happens naturally, or I hope.
For you on your journey, when did you figure out that feminism was a lie? Like, was there a certain event that triggered it that you were like, holy crap, this is BS?
I actually tell the story in this book. I think I do, actually. I think it's in this book, or it's in my last book, actually. It's in Blackout, of this teacher that I had. And I was required to take a Feminism 101. It was called Women's Studies. Maybe it was Women's Studies 201 at the University of Rhode Island. And at that time, I was like, yeah, I'm a feminist, of course. Who doesn't want equality as they sold it?
Yeah.
I get into this classroom, and this teacher, I realized very quickly, was not actually motivated by wanting equality. I was in a classroom where she was trying to convince me that every problem that we had in society was due to men. This was a literal class that was designed to basically teach women to hate men.
Yeah.
Like, no matter, all you had to do to get an A was she would introduce any problem. She could have lost her keys that morning and been like, why did this happen?
Patriarchy.
Well, you know who designed cars? You know who designed cars? Do you know who designed the whole concept of a car key and who designed the couch that you lost it in this morning? It was men. It became to a point where for me, it was like laughable.
Yeah.
But there was this one particular class where it clicked for me. Because when I was in college, I had an eating disorder. So I was sitting in her class and I was anorexic, and she gets into this topic of anorexia and eating disorders. And she gave us some statistic about the percentage of women that have eating disorders. And I'm making this up now, but it was something like 80% of people who have eating disorders are women. And she asked the class, why is that? And we were supposed to say, and she did say, that it was because men control the advertising agency and men want women to be skinny. And it had literally, I'm sitting here having this experience, nothing to do with a man. Like nothing, no man said you're fat, you have to be skinny. That is completely made up. And I'm listening to her try to psychologically convince me that my eating disorder came from a man when it just factually didn't. Most people who suffer with anorexia know it's a control mechanism. It actually has nothing even to do with weight. It just is like, this is the one thing you can control. And I just kind of called her out on that, and I raised my hand. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, well, let's look at another statistic. What percentage of people are juicing up with steroids, right? That's not a super healthy thing to do. If we said that 90% of it was men, would you have presented to the class that it was because of women, right? Because women are telling them they have to look like this. And she was, when I say she went white, and she said to me, and I always tell the story on stage, she said to me, I feel like you were sent to me from the men's department.
Of course.
Yeah. And I told her back that I was sent to her from the common sense department.
Yeah.
And that everything couldn't be because of men. So I think that was kind of the first time that it clicked for me that this was some sort of a psychological program. In many ways, I was actually saved by...
How old were you at that point?
I was in college, 20s? So I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It was the first year of college.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a prerequisite. So it was interesting for me, I think.
Did that make you shift your priorities? Like,
I wasn't like, I was never a gun-ho feminist. I just was like in the back of my mind, same way that I was liberal. Like I was never voting Democrat, but if you had asked me, what do you think about this? I would have very quickly been like, of course we need feminism.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of thinking, man, these women are really annoying in this classroom. Because then there were the majors that were there, you know, the people, these women that were tatted up and like growing their armpit hair out. You know, we had those people in class and I was like, I don't like any of these people. So it made me think that there was something more to the feminist movement, I think, that which was indoctrination.
Interesting. Okay. So I think you've been able to do what every woman dreams of: have a family, have children, have your dream man, but simultaneously being able to also, you know, run a business and do what you want to do. And I noticed when you were debating on Jubilee, some of them tried to say, oh, well, you're a hypocrite. You're over here talking about feminism being bad, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, you obviously have a lot of things set up where you maximize your ability to be with your family, right? You do your show, get out of there, spend time with your family. What would you say to the people that sit there and try to call you a hypocrite because, you know, you're successful in your own right, but you've been able to also balance a family, which many women can't do. They want to do it, but they can't do it. What would your response be to those critics?
First and foremost, do not allow people to rule you by exceptions. What I mean by that is, it is such a mistake to look at my life and to say, Candace did this, and so therefore I can do this. My life is actually exceptional, right? We are sitting in my house. I do things on my own terms. I wake up in the morning. I get to homeschool my kids, right? I'm homeschooling my children for hours. That's now very important to me. I get to do a podcast from home. And I am actually doing something that I enjoy, right? What is the number one thing? If you find any woman that makes it and she's successful, what is she doing? She's tapping into her femininity, communication. Women communicate more than men. I have a whole chapter on this. If you have a daughter and a son, you know this. Girls start speaking faster, and we will speak more words from men for the rest of our lives. And when you actually look, and I ask people in this chapter, who is the most, if I ask you the question right now, who is the most successful man in the world? Just give me your answer. If you have to name a couple of them.
I was going to say, like, from a financial perspective?
Yeah, sure. Full stop. If I said who's the most successful man in the world, who would you
could
say?
say like the richest guy in the world, who would be Elon, even though it pains me to say that. But
okay, no, but that's the right. You would say Elon, or you would say
something based on meritocracy, finances, and
you would
status.
say Jeff Bezos.
Precisely.
Everyone would say the same answers, right? Yeah. If I ask you who is the most successful woman in the world, what would you say?
That's where it gets true. Yeah,
right.
I see what you're saying.
Like, what is it? Like, off the top of your mind, like what are the names that come to your mind?
Yeah, it's an ambiguous, like, you're like, okay, well, are we going to go off career? Are we going to go off where?
But most people would say like Taylor Swift or Oprah. Mm-hmm. These women are nowhere near the richest women in the world. Nobody knows the name of the richest woman in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I go about through this in my chapter. Yeah, you'd say Beyonce. I'm like, these are the names that you would say off the top of your head if I asked you who's the most successful. Nobody knows. Everybody knows the names of the most the richest men in the world, and yet nobody knows the names of the richest women in the world.
Good
right?
Point.
Nobody knows the names of them. And the answer is a Russian woman. And I talk about this in my book. I'm like, nobody knows her name. And the women that you do name actually all tapped into their femininity. Taylor Swift was writing songs about relationships. Mm-hmm. She was writing songs about looking for love. Mm-hmm. And women flocked to this. Oprah was communicating to the housewife, right? She was speaking about issues. They're tapping in actually to the one thing that actually you think they're standing against. Oh, they're the ultimate feminists. No, they tapped into their femininity and found success, actually. And women do not, when we think about success, we don't measure it in terms of finances. That's why these women, we think, are the most, quote unquote, successful women in the world. Mm-hmm. Whereas men naturally think finances. Oh, it's Jeff Bezos, it's Elon Musk. So I do a chapter and I speak about that in my book about who the richest woman in the world is. And then the next 10 women who are the richest in the world are all rich because of who they divorced, mm-hmm. right? Yep. Yeah. So what is the picture that we're recognizing here? We don't measure success in the same terms as men measure success, nor should we. And it's important for women not to think that becoming financially rich somehow means that you are successful or that you have triumphed something in life.
And since having children, like, how has that like shifted your priorities as far as, I mean, and you can go into as much detail or as little as you want, as far as like how you've kind of prioritized child rearing versus like maybe your career and doing social media as much, because I noticed, you know, before you were super active, you still post obviously every day, but now it's like, you know, you have other priorities. So how has that kind of shifted?
Yeah, my family is my number one priority. I would say having kids made me more secure than ever before. I just don't care about the noise. None of it matters anymore. And also, I have real stake in this fight. Before, these were just ideas. America shouldn't be run like this. This is why, this is what's bad. Once you have kids, you have actually a real stake in the future of America. So when I am podcasting, the subjects that I am covering to me are existential, right? Are we being ruled by pedophiles and criminals? That's now existential for me. What is happening in the school systems? What is happening in these churches? What is going on? This is now existential because my children will inherit the America that I fight for or the America that I remain silent about.
And just to kind of finish off with the feminism real quick. So what do you think are the top 3 things holding women back from fulfillment and happiness right now?
The number one thing I would say that's holding women back would be not understanding the history of feminism, I think. I think once you know that, everything, like knowledge is actually power. I would say the second thing that's holding them back is the psychology of peer pressure. And that is the psychology and the peer pressure starts when we are in school with women being told you have to go to college, you have to have a career. The last thing you should be thinking about, you have plenty of time. You don't actually have plenty of time. Biologically speaking, you literally don't have plenty of time. Men might have plenty of time, biologically speaking, but your body is telling you you don't. Mm-hmm. And so I think, and then that kind of gets into the education. The education system truly is just Soviet propaganda in the classrooms. So those would be the top 2 things. And so they're ignoring their gut instinct and following the herd.
So understanding what feminism is and how it came into place makes it a lot easier to understand everything else. All right, fair enough. What do you think so far about this, switching to politics? What do you think so far about this administration with Trump? Good, bad, the ugly?
Sad. Honestly, the first thing that I would say is that it makes me sad because obviously I spent a lot of time helping Trump get elected, trying to help Trump get elected. And Trump is...
I see a photo right here, yeah.
Yeah, he's a part of my political story, right? A part of my political awakening, if you want to call it that. And it feels to me like when he said, what Epstein files, you know? Are we still talking about the Epstein files? It was just like we were so close. We did everything we could. And we were supposed to be fighting a swamp, and then what happened? What, the Loch Ness monster, which is Israel, rose up and swallowed our hero whole. So it makes me sad, and I think we all can very clearly see what has happened on the basis of who is now supporting him. The literal Never Trump movement is now supporting Trump and telling us that we're radicals, the people who initially supported Trump. So there's been a complete flip, and they're trying to use this mechanism of psychology to convince us, oh, we just got here, but we noticed this rot, which is the original MAGA movement. It's completely ridiculous. Their tactics aren't working, but I think it also indicates to us that there is something very scary and sinister that is in DC, right? That turns good men, it like petrifies good men that go in maybe with the best of intentions. And then they see something else. Like, what happens to these people? We don't know. Like, where is, I mean, day in and day out, Kash Patel and Dan were saying, we're going to do this. We get the FBI. Now they look petrified. They look petrified, actually. There's nothing here, actually, to see about these Epstein files. What are you talking about? You kind of made your show off of what needed to happen with the Epstein files. So it's sad.
So if you were to rate them, because people have asked me this question, so now I get to ask someone else. What grade would you give them right now at this point based on, you know, obviously the Epstein files, I agree with you. It's a huge debacle. It's going to probably be a huge negative in his legacy at the end of the day. If you had to grade his presidency so far within, we're 11 months in roughly, what would you say?
So I would say I'm biased. So if you're asking me to grade, you know how you would have those teachers where if you would take a test and they would automatically flunk you if you didn't put your name on the paper?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Epstein thing for me is like automatic flunk if you don't put your name on the paper, right?
Gotcha.
So if like I'm a mom now, so this was the most important thing to me, was figuring out where the pedophiles are in our society. And
that was your number one voting.
This for me,
becoming
a mother, because you have to remember Epstein, and I did a partial series, a mini series on what we discovered about him. He just got pulled through the ranks, right? Bankrupted Americans. Same thing with the Maxwell family, bankrupted people in England, and was allowed to do this. He had absolutely no background. He was given access to children. He had an office on Harvard campus, despite only having a high school diploma, which I can't even verify his high school diploma, if I'm being honest with you. And this was going to show us everything. He had access to Hollywood. He was working with Weinstein. He had some notorious fight with Harvey Weinstein right before Harvey went down. So now I'm kind of going back in my mind and thinking that's a question I should probably ask Harvey Weinstein, is what they were fighting about. And he had access to models. I mean, this man was just handed the keys to Les Wexner's empire, which even how that empire started has got a shady story with a guy who said that Les Wexner was the literal devil. He was the guy who controlled Victoria's Secret. He said, this man is evil. And then suddenly that guy jumps off the Golden Gate Bridge and decides to give his company to Les Wexner. That doesn't really make sense. So we had this rare opportunity to really understand how the Matrix was put together, in my view. And Trump took us to this line and then balked. And I'm not sure why he did. Okay. Maybe it's because he almost survived his assassination attempt. He survived his assassination attempt.
Yeah, two of them.
And maybe they put him in a room and said, here's how it's going to go. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try not to judge him because I don't know what he is going through. But for me, the Epstein files was a name on the paper.
So what are your thoughts on the current news? Because it just resurfaced again. They're, in the process right now of getting everything declassified. I understand that there were a bunch of emails that came out. And it's coming back up again. I can tell because I'm seeing nothing but CNN clips on it. Anytime they love to hit Trump when it comes to this Epstein thing. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the latest information that came out recently with the emails and everything else like that?
When he initially balked on discussing Epstein and Pam Bondi did the whole crazy bit, I was told that it was because there was donors he was protecting, and that makes sense to me. I have never felt, and I'm a pretty good vibe person, Trump's not into kids, right? Mm-hmm. So the nature of the emails, was he at a party when people should just think about that. When people say, oh, they exchange, like he was on his plane, never on the island, but like was on the plane, or was it a party? If you were you live in Miami. If you were at a party, the idea that somebody could be at any club that you are at or any party that you are at has somebody that's underage and looks like she could be 18, and that doesn't really track to me as any evidence of anything other than the fact that he was at a party once, and Jeffrey Epstein was very clearly running a sophisticated network and a blackmail ring. So I don't think that whatever they have on Epstein with Trump and Epstein is going to implicate Trump in any of that stuff. Yeah. And I've been around him. Trump has a type, and I have never felt that vibe from him at all. But I do think he's protecting some of his donors. I do believe that because I look at them and they just creep me out. And he took a lot of money from Miriam Adelson, the Adelson family, hundreds of millions of dollars from Miriam Adelson. And I think that's kind of the beginning of everything. So when they started leaking these emails, I read it as like a public threat to him. Maybe they're arguing about something in the background and he's holding the line on something. So because they obviously have all the Epstein stuff. He was their blackmail guy, And so if people don't listen, they probably do a little trickle. That's how I read it. I read it as like a public threat, and they want something from him, and they're going to be like, capitulate or we will hit you with everything they have. And we need to have a leader that just comes right out in a press conference and says, they have this about me. They've been threatening me with it. I'm going to tell them to release everything, and I'm going to hold the line. People would cheer. We wouldn't even care. We'd be like, okay, like as long as you are not implicated in harming children, right? I can deal with you being at a party that Epstein was at and finding out that whatever it is that they have on you. That's my gut instinct about the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that I think he doesn't give me the vibe that he's like doing that type of thing with children. But I do think that maybe there's something in there that looks really bad optically. Mm-hmm. And that's might be why, or to protect donors, like you said, because I look at it like if there was something really bad like that, the Democrats would have exposed that during the Biden administration if there really was. So, that's another thing as well.
I subscribe to the channel.